Hi, welcome. Could you introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Hi, everybody. My name is John Abdallah Wambere, known by the names Long Johns, based on my work. I am a Ugandan gay activist, currently based in Boston. I sought asylum in 2014, and I was granted, I'm a US resident. I am also a co-founder of Spectrum Uganda Initiatives, an organization that works with men who have sex with men and same-sex loving males around the areas of HIV/AIDS, and also advocating for inclusion into the healthcare policies in Uganda. And I've also been able to be part of the um, Ugandan LGBTQ delegation that was able to write a universal periodic review that was submitted to the United Nations for review on Uganda. I appreciate being a part of the international community, and I love working and supporting the Bergen County LGBT Community Center.
Thank you. Thank you. So I just have I know you're very busy, and I just have like two kind of questions I thought would be interesting. And you forgot to add that you were in Call Me Kuchu.
Okay, I know.
I love that movie. That's so important. It's such an important documentary. So let me ask you, because people, I think their perception when they talk about LGBT issues, it's very Americanized, and they believe the rights and everything is like, oh, this is horrific, and look at, they're not supporting me in this way, and they sort of like their base level is so they think that's the worst it could be. And someone that's on an international level, where we see like in Chechnya and in some of the Middle East countries and in Africa, where it's literally people are being killed. Could you give like an international perspective on LGBT issues?
Yeah, I think my perspectives will come from, I would say, from a bi kind of view, where I'll be giving my own observational perspectives as an outsider who is currently living in the Western world, and also as a born and raised African male who happens to be Black and gay. And so, of course, the environments are totally different. There is a lot of persecution. They are holding on to, the states are holding on to laws that were, established way back in 1950s. We see a couple of countries that colonized African continent have progressed and moved on to decriminalize same-sex relations. But in Africa, we see that same-sex relations are still being persecuted. It's not a free world. It's not something that is acceptable, even if we know that in some cultures there have been noted cultural same-sex marriages that would allow, maybe if a man died, for a wife or a sister to inherit, to not to inherit, but to become, the partner of the widow. So, but that is all seen as culture and it's acceptable, but they don't really want to look at it more as a same-sex affair. Looking at the Western world, I mean, I don't say that everything is silver and gold either, but the fact that there has been a lot of research done, I think it has helped also. It has helped in a way that the Western world has been able to look at data and investigate and come to terms that true people are born this way. I think there's the issue of knowledge and ignorance in this area. But I think the most outstanding piece is what the aspect of religion and culture that is always integrated. And it doesn't just end there, and then it takes on the political aspect as well. So I'll just give an example, like, Call Me Kuchu, for example, the documentary that I featured in, it tells about the day-to-day lives, the reality of the Ugandan LGBT community, what people lived through. It is not a Hollywood kind of script thing. And in that, we can take so many lessons from it, because it captures a broad area. It captures the aspect of laws. It reflects the healthcare system. It reflects religion. It reflects the politics. And I think it's a rich documentary to watch. If anybody hasn't watched it, it's Call Me Kuchu. And in the advocacy piece, it's a bit very difficult, or rather difficult, to juggle around getting the political leaders and legislators in a country that is so homophobic, and a country that strongly holds onto religion and culture, to even sensitize them about the fact that as citizens, there is this group of citizens also. They don't really view it that way. They all believe that it's a Western culture. And I think this is, again, it takes me back to the ignorance piece, whereby we rely more on the Western research other than doing our own research. And because of that, it's unfortunate. And we find that at the end of the day, most people are being persecuted for living the reality of who they are. In the Western world, politically, it's progressing because the environment of advocacy is different. In Africa or Uganda, the advocacy is very aggressive. In the Western world, it's a little bit mild or mellow, I would say, because people have peaceful demonstrations, of course, today, but we know that it started also very violent. And someone has the option to pick a call and call their legislator or representative, send out emails, and you know that somewhere someone will pick that call and listen to you, even if sometimes they may not really fully act on it. It doesn't mean because they listen to you they'll act on, but they give an ear to a concern of a citizen, especially one who elects you into a position of power, which is totally different from Africa. They will take every other advantage of every situation to scapegoat, with a lot of corruption, poor healthcare, and bad roads and infrastructure in general. They just have always reason to try to create a moment to scapegoat. I mean, looking at Uganda in particular, we know that there was this law that was brought up in 2009 that was still on top of already a 1950 law. They were introducing a new law that was calling for the killing of gay people. Unfortunately, there was so much little. We did the best we could to fight it, but again, we see influence coming from every corner. The politicians who are the legislators, and the church, which actually should be teaching love and, instead was standing up to condemn and calling for the killing of gay people. That's the unfortunate piece of it. But all I have to say is that I think the trend that we see going globally, around LGBTQ issues is the fact that society struggles to understand. And again, this is sometimes due to lack of knowledge, and also the fact that the way they structure I would say the anti-gay people, the way they structure their message is always mind-blowing. Like in Uganda's case, they were using like, we are recruiters, we are here to destroy the family, those kind of words or statements that are very catchy and intimidating to anybody out there who is a parent, any legislator, or a person in leadership. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's, you just brought up like so many good points. And it's like, where do you take that? I mean, like the religion, there's so many things to talk about, but I know you have limited time. So I was, one of the things I find it's interesting is you're talking about the Western perception of LGBT, and how that is guiding, well, not guiding, it's like sort of like takes over parts of the world, and places like in Africa where they're not doing their own research because of the situations and stuff. So like the perception, LGBT is not necessarily used throughout the world, and people don't understand that. They use other places do soji or their own belief systems as to what is LGBT, gay and lesbian society. Um, yeah, and that's kind of why I wanted you here, is to give that space for that, because if we're gonna actually help the community, the LGBT community, you're part of the community. You come here and you're living here, you're part of the community. And I think it's unfair for people to put you in these boxes here. And so I guess what I'm saying, long rant, is how do you feel about those two perceptions, like being a person who comes from Africa and then all of a sudden you're here and now you're put in a box of a Black American gay experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think, okay, it's interesting because as one, I know, just as a Black person who has faced persecution because of the laws that do not protect us, but also it is also a bit of the cultural aspect of it. I think I totally look at it in the same way, even as a Black man here in the US, because there is family attachment, there's the pride of the family. They do not have to know. We have to protect the family name. And there is the whole thing that the masculinity aspect of it, I think that's the word, where a man should be ABC, a man should be that, a man shouldn't be this. And we try to see that most people are trying to man up, even when they man up to wear that crown, because society wants to see it that way. But deep inside, they are wearing a different feeling. It's a bit tough, but you have to live it. You have to survive it. It's just like today, I know here they refer it more to the DL. Today for us in Uganda, this bisexual identifying community can't even stand out, because as a bisexual, they will probably stand out leaning towards the heterosexual side when it comes to being out and speaking for the sexual minority groups, as opposed to totally standing and probably saying, hey, I'm gay leaning, or hey, look, I am on this side and I'm on that side. It's a bit tricky for the bisexuals. I'm not an expert in that, but we see that. And because of the culture, it has put most of them into a relation or into a box that they are caught in and struggle to get out. I know personally of relations that have, I know personally of friends who are really like gay identifying, but have ended up having to get involved or marry biological women because the family wants to see them that way, or the family is expecting them to give them a grandchild, or oh, your parent or your family has a high profile in the community, either your parents are pastors or they are government officials, or some leader holding some leadership positions. It's just unfortunate. And I'm not so surprised, to be honest. I just take time to understand more of the Black community here, but I see a lot of reasons as to why it happens, that they too struggle with their own sexuality to live openly and freely as they want to. And it is just so much of being a DL, so much of being masculine. You meet somebody, I mean, we can have this conversation like, we know dating sites, everyone asks, are you acting? I need someone acting straight, acting masculine. I mean, it's so unfortunate because then you are trying to create a situation or looking for this specific kind of people to deal with. And I don't know how many are out there, but I even actually I don't know the word how to describe it, but the bottom line, it's really tough. It's tough. It's tough, and this is all just because of the community and stuff. But I will just talk about navigating healthcare, I think, or services as a community. I think the greatest achievement I see that has really, really, really blown my mind being here is being able to walk into a clinic as a gay man and be able to talk freely to a healthcare provider about your problems or your issue without having to make up a story or concoct anything, which is unfortunate in the other parts of the world. I would say where the laws are still not protecting the minority groups, even if we know that healthcare is a human right. You walk into a clinic, and if you have an STD or STI, they're going to ask you where your partner is, or bring your partner or something. It's so scary. When you go and you have like an unknown infection, then you have to, how you're going to explain this? You concoct up a story, or maybe we went to a party and I got drunk, I woke up, I think this happened. It's unfortunate that you have to really struggle. And before even you come up with that story, it takes a couple of days, you're in pain. And whatever your infection you have is just becoming more chronic because you're trying to think, how do I move in? How do I state this? How do I put it forward there? And like here, I wake up, I'm not feeling okay. I call, make the appointment, walk in, and straight away, boom, you just say what it was. And, you will get the care you need and you move out. And the healthcare, the healthcare departments keep track and they follow up with you to check how you're doing, and they try to follow the track of who are the partners you could have been with prior to this and that, which is very helpful because it helps curb the spread of infection. unlike, honestly, again, I'm talking from two different worlds, my experiences here and there. And, you know, I even with countries where they say they have laws that protect LGBTQ, like South Africa, they still struggle among LGBTQ people, you know, in terms of being able to access, you know, like treatment and care. And I think the services are very important, especially when they are directed specifically to target this community, and having professionals trained and create more awareness in how to work with these communities, because there is having the services, but if the providers are not trained, then again, there's going to be another backlash on that area. Because, for example, I know counselors who were doing counseling services to some of the LGBTQ clients in Uganda, and they were like, "Oh, you're so cute, you're so handsome. Why don't you just turn to Jesus? You know, why don't you just get married?" It's just unfortunate, and that is really a turnoff. And the community will think that you're setting them up, you know. So training the people who are going to work in these centers or service providers is very key, and just letting them know. I mean, there are ethics, I know, around healthcare, confidentiality, protecting information, patient data and stuff like that. But some of these things are just individual based, because an individual is ignorant, or an individual is so religious attached that they just forget the ethics of their work, you know, versus, you know, yeah.
So my last question, and part to explore is, you know, because you talk about there are parts of the world that have laws and stuff, and it's not, but still, it's because of the ignorance and because of the culture, it's still a problem. And I can say to an extent that's happening here in the United States as well. You know, we have laws, and there's still the culture. So my question is, and then also how you talk about people who don't, you know, here you can get access to care, and you can get that done. And I work in, you know, infectious disease community, and I know, you know, in a perfect world, people will do that and take advantage of that, but it's still their mindset is, no, you can't talk about that, you can't do that. So my question to you is, how do we support people that are asylum seekers here? How do we better help serve them and understand them? Because, you know, as we know, we're trying to create an LGBT center, and we have a lot of people that are undocumented, that are coming from different parts of the world. How do we see them better and their needs?
I think the most challenging as an asylum seeker, I mean, as a refugee, it's different. You may, because you come into the country when more or less your paperwork and everything is all set. But of course, you have to still navigate you have to navigate and begin integrating into the culture, you know, which is very tough, beginning to learn the food, how people do things. There is coming mentally when you know everything, you know, my paperwork is done. That is there is the living the reality, which is, how are you moving from place A to B? How do you relate? How do you talk? What is the, you know, they're the everyday small things that an American would expect. And if you come in and you're not, you know, accustomed to that, then they're gonna look at you as someone who is ignorant or rude, when actually it's not. For example, the culture of holding the door behind, you know, it's not something big where we come from, but when you come here, you know, you don't just let the door slam behind the person behind you, you know, you hold it, which makes sense in a way. But so I think when we bring services to our communities, closer to our communities, and if we want to focus working with asylees or refugees. I think the cultural knowledge is very, very important. Teaching or guiding them through the cultures to save them from getting into trouble, to teach them about how they can be able to compete for success in this country, other than thinking that all I can do is go and work for a minimum paying job. I would also think of areas encouraging them to go back to studies, because school is really a great space. It helps, and be part of a group, either a church community where you feel comfortable, because these help you. I know there is this thing where people want to hear our stories, and there's so many questions that come up. Let them know that their stories are very important, and people will want to hear that, because it sometimes gets overwhelming, but you don't know how to say, I can't. Everyone is calling you and pulling you aside and saying, oh, tell me. So this is going on. So this is that. And you can find you're talking about this for the next couple of months and years, So to set them up, for the culture change is very key. Setting them up for a culture change is very key. There's the culture shock, which is okay, but slowly, getting them to understand. I think the challenge that asylum seekers are facing mostly is we cannot determine about USI speed, because we know there's a whole backlog. That is not what we want. But how do we, as communities or people who are here already trying to support these communities, set them again for success? I know the challenge is usually around accommodation. Accommodation is very, very challenging, and having to wait long before they can be able to work, because mentally it's draining. Getting them involved into activities, volunteering would be a great place to help them mentally, other than waking up and you're like, what are you going to do? Watch movies? Probably not. Walk in the neighborhood? Probably. Sit in the house? Eat, some activities that can engage them, or keep them engaged rather, is very important. But I think, to me, the most challenging piece is just more about the culture. Once it goes both ways. The newcomer and the host both need to have this cultural diversity, sensitizations, and I think just being realistic to them also helps, because some of the hosts don't know. They don't know. They think because they are who they are. There is a lot of freedom in this country, I have to say, even if it doesn't, it sometimes looks like that. When I travel, I easily forget that I'm in a different country and I do things that you could do in America and get away with. And before you realize, on the other side, someone's saying, hey, yeah, you don't do that, you could get in trouble. It's interesting, because when I went to Barbados and I got to my house and we were walking the street, it was so beautiful, like a whole different life, and I put my hand over his shoulder to take a selfie, and he was in shock, and he was like, oh, wait, oh, look, the neighbors, you can't do that. You can't put your hand over my shoulder. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm like, because here, I mean, our communities develop trust and they get you so close, people start giving you hugs, people start, creating that bond of friendship. It doesn't have to be deep relations. And because it's an ongoing thing, it becomes part of you, and when you forget, when you travel, you forget the limits. Boundaries are important, definitely, but yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you gave so much good stuff today. Thank you so much. I mean,
I
I appreciate
appreciate
this,
it.
especially this last part, because it's going to be so helpful. Because I hope to help people. We have where we live, we have a detention center right next to us, with a lot of people being held there, and I hope, in when you live here, it's weird because people aren't even aware that it's right, feet away, miles away from us. There's this detention center where this is going on. But I hope things to change, and I hope people coming into the community to help them. And I don't think a lot of people are thinking in those terms. They will just see a person, and just put them in a box and say, if you're Black, you're this. If you're gay, you're this. And this is all the treatment you get, and this is it. That's it. What we see of you, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to be, more empathetic to the people that come in.
Yeah, true.
So
Well, I mean, I can't wait. I hope I'll be visiting the Bergen LGBT Community Center soon, and I would love to hear more about your work now.
yeah, well, you will. We talk regularly.
Yeah.
I will. I mean, I'm hoping, if the universe is out there, that we are so successful that we can be like, hey, why don't you come work with us?
Oh yeah,
That's what
that
I
would
would
be
like
amazing.
to do.
Yeah, I would. I've been in Boston 7 years. I can't wait to get to another change.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So let me ask,
But thank you so much. I'm glad that you had such a great idea. It's a great project. Bringing services closer to the people. We suffer a lot. We suffer a lot in silence, and we always feel helpless because we don't know where to run to sometimes. And this has led to suicide cases and all that because we are bullied. But having such facilities close by, creates what you would call attachment, but with boundaries, limits, where that I can go and we have also just so many young people who are still struggling with their bodies, trying to understand who they are. They can't even talk to their parents. They can't even talk to their school teachers or peers because they feel maybe it's not okay. But when a center like this is, they strongly believe and trust and know that, okay, this center is specifically working on could address some of my struggles. I think we have professionals there. I will need to step in and see something. So I think it's a good idea, and communities need these services nearby.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we are done. I just wanted to ask you, this is being recorded, and do you give permission for this to be made public?
Oh, yes.
And you feel comfortable with everything that was talking about? Because
Yeah.
you're raising really important issues of people having to talk about this stuff over and over again. So I always like to ask people, do you feel comfortable with what was said? And
yeah, that's totally okay. That's fine. I give you all the consent.
I love
to the
this.
work of LGBTQ people. So
And I just want to tell you, it's like, but you sort of like make this distinction. It's not Hollywood and it's a documentary. I was like, I value this documentary and what was brought about so much more than any Hollywood movie. I was so awestruck in meeting you and then getting to know you over the years, and how you are so resilient and strong and amazing and such a beacon to people.
thank you.
I've seen you at the UN, I've seen you here, I've seen you in your home.
Oh
I'm
Lord.
just like, Thank you. No, seriously, thank you, because you are
Thanks.
truly a light in our community. And thank
Thank
you
you.
for that.
I appreciate for your kind words.
Yeah. Well, I think we're done. Do you want to say goodbye to everyone?